My friends, welcome to this tutorial about creating games with Solarus. Today we will finally introduce something very powerful, which is custom entities. So when you are on a map, you have various kind of entities, of built-in entities like enemies, teletransporter, destructible objects, invisible walls, separators, doors, chests, all of these here. But there is this extra one, which is custom entity. Basically, it's also like all other entities. They have a position, a size, they can have a sprite or not, but they don't have any special behavior built in at all. And they are entirely customizable in Lua. So, in this first example, let me just remove these guys here. We want to do a very small first example of custom entity, which is just a flame. So we'll create for this example a lantern item, and the effect of this item is to create some fire here, and the fire will be implemented as a custom entity. So first thing first, we want to create a new item, the lantern. So it will be saved. If you don't remember how to create an item, it is not the main topic of this tutorial, but it's always useful to have a small reminder. Save game variable, so you can name the variable that will store the position state of this item, and we will also say that it can be assigned to an item command so that we can use it with one of the item keys. And when we use it, it's here that we will define the behavior. But first, let's don't forget that anytime we create an item, we need the item sprite and the item dialog. So the item sprite is always entities/items, and each item must have its own animation that has the name of the item. And yeah, here the source image of my animation will be items/lantern, and it will have simply one frame, 16 by 16, and that's it. The second thing is to create the dialog in dialogs.dat of your languages, and it has to be called _treasure dot the name of the item dot the number of the variant. So there is only one variant here, and our dialog will just be "you found the lantern, yay!" Okay, good. So once we have that, we can put on our map, it would be nice to put a treasure chest with the new item. So I haven't even started to talk about custom entities really. I'm just creating the new item first. And this item will be our excuse to implement a custom entity. Okay, so I have the lantern, but now I need to put it in my inventory to assign it to an item key. So now that we have a proper inventory, it's cool that we can do that. Scripts, where is it? It's pause menu. So here I have the list of the items that I want to see in the inventory grid. So let's add the lantern, and we should have a small error here in the inventory. Yeah, because if you read this, it means that we forgot to put a string to describe the lantern in strings.dat, It's because our inventory menu wants to display the name of the selected items. If you saw the tutorial about inventory, maybe you remember that we have to do this inventory item lantern. So I'm adding just this string here. This is not really the topic of this tutorial, but I want to have a valid item that I can show in the inventory and show its name here. And now the item can be assigned to X or V, one of the two default item keys. And now if I use it, well, nothing happens because my script, so let me close all of these. What's important is probably only these two. So my item script here, item on using is called when I press the item key. So what do we want? We want to create we want to create an entity with the fire sprite. So one thing we could do is to use the old Createfire function that allows to actually create an entity of type fire, which is a built-in type, but it only still exists for historical reasons, because before Solarus 1.2, so that's very old, there was no custom entities, and it was not possible to create to really customize what you wanted to create on your map. So you could only create what the engine was supporting, and yeah, even the documentation recommends not to do that. Let's do it just to see what happens, and then we will improve it with custom entities. So map Createfire, and the parameters are a properties table with at least layer X and Y. Which means that we will need X, Y, layer, hero, get position, and I need the hero. I also need the map, because I'm using a map variable that is not even declared. So it's item get, oops, or game get map. And the game is defined here, so it should work. Okay, so let's just create some fire entity at the same coordinates as the hero. And here I'm creating a built-in fire entity. So it works. We can see it below the hero, so I have to move to really see it. And it automatically disappears when the animation is finished. So that's some built-in fire entity, which uses the sprite entity/fire. So it has to have that name if you are using the built-in fire. And well, nothing is customizable actually. It can hurt enemies, but that's it. It is the only effect. So probably we want to use custom entities instead to have better customization. And this example is to create some fire entity, but if you want to create anything else, any other custom weapon or some ice effect, anything, well, the engine doesn't have historical built-in entities for all your possible ideas, of course. So really, I would not recommend to you. I would just not recommend to use Createfire, but instead create custom entity. And here you can really do what you want. So let's see the documentation. It is just below here, custom entities. It also takes a table of properties, but with more stuff. The direction here is mandatory, which is a bit strange, by the way. Maybe one day it will become optional, but that's really just a small detail. The direction that you're passing here will be applied to the entity's sprites if they have such a direction. So let's just put direction equals 0. Our fire sprite only has one direction here, so direction 0 will be applied to the sprite no matter what was the direction of the hero. Width and height are also mandatory, and we might want to pass a sprite here. So width 16 and height 16, and if we don't pass a sprite, then the entity will just exist there and be invisible. So let's use our entity/fire sprite. So when we pass this string, the entity will be created with a sprite from this ID. So basically this one, with the default animation, our animation called once here. By the way, this particular sprite comes from the Trillium resource pack, but you can use any fire sprite that you want. And well, that's more or less it. Let's see what happens. I can still create my fire entities. Maybe we want to put a sound. Probably we want to create the fire not on the hero, but in front of the hero. And finally, we have to realize that we are creating entities and never destroying them. We don't see them anymore because this is just because our fire sprite has an end. But if let's just temporarily set this other animation as repeating by default, so that the animation never ends. And here you will see the problem. I can create endless sprite entities. Endless fire entities, so that's probably not what we want. How can we fix this? First, we can get the result of my map create and custom entity and say that well, let's put this one by default again and say that when the sprite animation is finished, we will remove the entity. Otherwise, even with this one, the entities will still exist, and it will kind of waste the memory for no reason. So let's just remove them when the animation is finished. So when the sprite animation is finished, we just remove the fire entity. Okay. And we also said that we wanted to play a sound. So I have a sound fireball for this example. And we also said that we wanted to create the the fire in front of the hero. So instead of X and Y the same as the hero, we will probably want to check the direction of the hero. So between 0 and 3, and see that direction. So if the hero is facing right, then well, let's create two variables, dx and dy. If we are facing right, then we will we'll create the fire 16 pixels more to the right. if we are facing north, it will be 16, minus 16 in the vertical direction, and so on. That should work. And instead of creating in x and y, we do x plus dx, y plus dy. Something like that should be better. Okay, so now the fire is created in front of me. That's more interesting. And well, that's a very basic fire entity that does absolutely nothing. I mean, it plays a sound and it removes itself when its animation is done. But apart from that, it does nothing. It will not hurt enemies because we didn't define anything about collisions. And maybe we want it later to hurt enemies, but also to burn bushes, which of course does not happen here. Maybe we want to do another weapon that will shoot some flames, so like a fire rod. And we will do examples of this later, but this is a very first basic custom entity that does, like I said, almost nothing. It has a position, it has a size, a sprite, but that's it, and that's already a custom entity. Okay, and what's interesting to know is that most of the built-in entities could, in theory, be re-implemented in Lua with custom entities. For instance, chests, stairs, doors, maybe even teletransporters, invisible walls, because the API of custom entities is more powerful than for the rest of entities. You can customize very precisely what can your custom entity traverse. So this is useful if your custom entity is moving. And what happens when there is a collision between your custom entity and some other entities. And you can pass a callback that will be called when the collision happens. We'll see some examples of that in later tutorials, but it's already useful to know that everything is customizable. Okay, so I guess that's it for this example. We'll extend it, of course, like I said, with by making the fire move, and by by creating some effect with collisions when it collides with an enemy or with a bush or with a torch. And the torch itself will also be implemented as a custom entity. So yeah, we will I think we can do a lot of tutorials about custom entities. I hope this one was clear enough for a first tutorial. You can create custom entities from the code like we did here, but also from the editor with this last icon, add custom entity. So you can start playing with them and check the documentation. And if you have any question, feel free to join our Discord. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you next time. Bye.